welcome to the May 7th, 2026 meeting of the City of Raleigh Design Review Commission. My name is Chair Springer, and I'm chair of the Design Review Commission for the City of Raleigh. The Design Review Commission is a public body appointed by City Council. It exercises both advisory and quasi-judicial functions. The commission's responsibility relate to zoning and other land use matters, as well as the visual quality and aesthetic characteristics of the city. The first item on our agenda today are approval of previous meeting minutes, March 19th and April 16th. Do I have a motion to approve or amend the March 19 minutes?
Motion to approve.
Any seconds? Second. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Those meetings will be signed and adopted. On meetings now, meeting minutes for April 16th. Do I have a motion to approve or amend those meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
All right. A second? Second. All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Those will be adopted as well. All right. Let our other two chair members get seated, and then we'll start with the QJ case. There is one case we're going to move up the agenda because of schedules. That is DA5 2026. I'm going to let our city attorney kind of introduce the attorneys filling in for that, since this is a matter involving the city.
Thank you, Chair Springer. Since I have a conflict, you will have substitute counsel for this matter only, and then I will return. This is Mr. Rasmussen.
The seat is down, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll get you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Francis Raspberry. I go by Raz, generally, an unfortunate nickname. Happy to be with you today. I'm serving as your counsel for this case, given the conflict of interest. I was with the Raleigh City Attorney's Office for about 30 years. Now I'm in private practice, 7 years. So I'm this is a familiar setting here.
All right. Well,
Happy to be here with you.
All right, with that, I'll start our kind of longer introduction here to quasi-judicial decisions. Today's agenda includes requests for design alternates from the city's Unified Development Ordinance. When hearing requests for design alternates, the commission sits as a quasi-judicial body and conducts an evidentiary hearing on the request. That means it's like a court hearing. State law sets procedures and rules concerning how this commission must make its decisions. The commission's decisions are constrained by the standards in the city's ordinance and the facts presented at the hearing. The commission hears and considers evidence presented at the hearing and applies the standards set forth in state law in the city's ordinance. The commission must base its decision upon competent material and substantial evidence presented at the hearing. If you will be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and standards, not personal preference or opinion. The meeting is open to the public and everyone is welcome to watch. However, participation in the evidentiary hearing is limited. Parties have the rights to participate fully. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Witnesses may testify as to the facts to which they are competent to testify, so long as those facts relate to the legal standards. In addition, lay or non-expert witness testimony is limited to facts, not opinions. For certain topics, the commission needs to hear about opinion testimony from expert witnesses. These topics include projections about impacts on property values and projections about traffic safety. All right, so with that, we'll call the first case for us. Again, that's DA05 2026 on today's agenda, and Jeff is going to present that case for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Jeff Kane, Senior Planner of Site Development Group with the City of Raleigh. I'm here to present the staff report for DA05 2026. Operation Coming Home, located at 15 Summit Avenue. The applicant is I was just announced I need to be sworn in first.
I apologize for not doing that.
That's why she's the supervisor.
Yes.
So.
All right. Jeff, before we begin, allow me to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, proceed, please.
All right. Summarize 15 Summit Avenue, case DA 05-2026. The site is located the corner of Summit Avenue and Waterworks Street. It's currently zoned RX4. And as you can see by the aerial photograph, it is currently vacant. So this would be a fresh development. The proposal that we are reviewing at the site development side is a development for 10 tiny houses for cottage court development. Site plan is shown here to give you a general idea what it will hopefully be looking like. The applicant requests two design alternatives. The first one is going to be relief from right-of-way dedication, Waterworks Street. Waterworks is again located at site plan south. And the second one is the location to construct a driveway onto Summit Avenue. The current proposal is 90 feet from the intersection, while the current standard is 150 feet. I won't go through each of the criteria here, but these are the specific criteria in UDO section 8.5.1 for cross sections. And for the second one, it will be UDO section 10.2.17.E for the Raleigh Street Design Manual. And with that, I'll conclude. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
The applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence must focus on the applicable standards. All right, and before you begin, can you please state your name, address, and relation to the case?
Yeah, my name is Sydney Wiswell, and I'm an attorney here on behalf of the applicant. My address is 150 Fayetteville Street, Suite 2800.
Thank you. Proceed.
Okay. Let's see. So, as you may be aware, last year the city of Raleigh decided to partner with CASA to develop an affordable housing development at 15 Summit Avenue. And CASA is partnering with Operation Coming Home, which works to provide housing for veterans. And to that end, they've come up with this site plan to provide 10 tiny homes, and all 10 units will be rented out and provided for people at the 60% AMI or lower. So we're really excited about this project. But there are some site constraints associated with the development, and so that's why we're here today seeking two design alternates. And I'll also note, this will come up a little later, that 2 of the units are going to be fully ADA accessible and have ADA accessible parking spots. So quickly, staff already touched on this, but we're seeking complete relief from the right-of-way dedication requirement, and then we're also seeking relief from the driveway spacing requirement in the street design manual. So first, as I mentioned, the UDO would typically require a right-of-way dedication with new development projects like this. And the right-of-way dedication requirement generally exists to ensure that the city has access and rights to the full cross-section of the street in order to avoid the need to ever acquire the property in the future, either via purchase or condemnation if improvements are needed. The city wants to make sure it controls the property so it can do what it needs to do moving forward. But in this case, there's a couple of reasons why the right-of-way dedication requirement isn't feasible and isn't strictly necessary in this property, for this property. And those 2 reasons are, 1, the existing Duke easement, which you can see visualized here, and also the fact that the city already owns the property, which is kind of an unusual wrinkle. But I'm gonna touch on the Duke Energy existing easement first. So you can see it runs across the south of the property along Waterworks Street, which is where the right-of-way dedication would typically be. and that 10 feet is right in the middle of the Duke Energy easement. So Duke has asked us to seek this design alternate for safety and grid security reasons. And then if we did have to dedicate the right-of-way, Duke would then require the city to slide the easement area north into that red band at the top. And that would obviously impact the tiny homes that are situated there and affect the overall affordability, or affect the number of affordable units that we're able to develop on the property. And I'll also just note that typically a development of this size consisting of less than half a block would not typically result in improvements. In the UDO, section 8.4.1 provides that a fee in lieu for improvements is appropriate when the block is less, or when the property is less than half of the block face. So we're not super concerned about the improvements issue here. And as I mentioned, there's not the typical need for dedication of the right-of-way that normally arises with new development projects. The city already owns the land. So if the city ever needs to expand or improve waterworks for any reason, it won't have to make any big purchases or go through condemnation. And then just to touch on some of the findings, we believe that the design alternate is consistent with safety and congestion considerations. The current width of waterworks is 41 feet from back of curb to back of curb, which exceeds the 38 feet required in the UDO. The maintenance strip is 4 feet, which exceeds the 1 foot required. The 6 foot sidewalk is consistent with the rest of the area, and we believe there's adequate bike pedestrian infrastructure. So we don't see any safety or congestion concerns existing here. And then our second design alternate request is a driveway spacing request. The street design manual requires driveways to be situated 150 feet from the nearest intersection, which here is Summit and Waterworks. And as you can see from the image, the driveway, which is in red, is only about 90 feet from the intersection. And unfortunately, we have already set this back as far as possible. There's a couple constraints. First, compliance with the full 150 feet would require putting the driveway at the very, very far northern part of the property, which could impact the number of units that are available and also the ADA accessibility. We're only providing 2 parking spots, and those are going to be ADA accessible spots for the ADA compliant units. So the situation of the driveway is important to providing accessibility. And I'll also note that there is another wrinkle, which is an existing driveway easement on the northern edge of the property that provides access to the neighboring property. And we're actually going to be in front of the Board of Adjustment on Monday seeking some relief from the requirement for driveway spacing from each other. So any way we slice it, we're going to be running into some trouble there. There's just not a lot of space to put a driveway based on the size of the property, the configuration, the easement. Yes. And we do not believe that this will impact congestion or safety. Like I mentioned, there's only 2 parking spots, so it shouldn't be a big impact. It's not going to create any new maintenance responsibilities for the city or affect stormwater. And we have a professional engineer who signed off on this who is available for questions. And he signed off on the other design alternate as well. Okay, so I'm going to walk through these quickly, and then we're available for questions if you have any. For our first design alternate, the right-of-way dedication, I walked through why this is consistent with the UDO. We're not concerned about future issues with the city if they need to acquire the property. We don't believe it'll increase congestion or compromise safety, and it maintains the street standards. It should not create additional maintenance responsibilities for the city because the city already owns the property. No stormwater impacts. We have a professional engineer who's approved this, and we think the design alternate is reasonable given the Duke easement, the small scale of the project, the site constraints, and the fact that the city already owns the land. And then For the second design alternate, we believe that although we're not strictly complying with the street design manual, we've set it back as far as possible. We don't believe this will increase congestion or impact safety. The development's small in scale and there's only a few parking spots. It should not impact stormwater or create additional maintenance responsibilities for the city. We have our engineer here and we think it's reasonable given the totality of the circumstances. And we don't want the street design manual and the constraints to impact the ability to put forth an affordable housing development that is really needed in the city. So that's everything from me. Do we have any questions for me or our engineer?
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the attorney?
You mentioned you evaluated the option of having the driveway at the northern end of the property. What was the impact that you had? You spoke to the number of units getting impacted, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe John might be able to speak to that a little bit more if you're comfortable with that.
1 moment, please.
Hey, I'm John Frazier, FLM Engineering. We're located 8951 Harvest Oaks Drive. That's Suite 205 in Raleigh, 27615.
And do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you.
So there's a number of factors that weigh in as to where that driveway can be located. And if can I go back to the... If you guys are seeing my mouse here, you see that is the existing driveway that was already pointed out to you guys for the neighboring property. So the further north we go, we are getting closer to that. And again, we're already having to seek a variance because we are too close to that now. And so we're essentially trying to split the difference between the intersection and the driveway to the north. And you can see as we move, if we were to move this driveway further north, it could potentially impact 2 to 3 units because this is designed to be a cottage court with a centrally located courtyard. And so that driveway and parking area kind of fits best within that courtyard. And if we move that driveway north, it impacts the layout of the courtyard and again could impact, at least 2 of the units potentially there. So we've really tried to optimize the location here. Obviously, it's not ideal, but we're dealing with a number of constraints on the property and trying to, provide the best layout here that we can.
Have there been any conversations about sharing that northern driveway with the neighbor?
There haven't. That's a single-family home. To my knowledge, that hasn't really been something that's been considered. Again, because that would impact our ability to create the cottage court that we're trying to. So we to my knowledge, we haven't considered a shared situation. Again, this serves what is essentially a parking lot for 2 ADA spaces, and their driveway serves their single-family house. So that's not something we had considered so far in terms of sharing.
Any other questions? Can I request Kevin from the city, just one question for you. I don't know if you're familiar with
Thank
this
you.
case or not, or whomever from transportation may be available.
I'm Michael Lamping from Senior Transportation Reviewer.
Thank you, Michael. And do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Just one question I have here. I know it's just 2 vehicles, but one dot I's, check and cross T's. Do you foresee any undue congestion with the added 2 parking spots?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Is that,
That was really it.
that's it? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and might have skipped this one, but are there any members from the public present who wish to speak? All right, seeing none. Commissioners, any other questions for the attorneys before we bring the matter to the table?
Yeah, I have one more question about the bike and pedestrian infrastructure. Do you have any exhibits that show what that looks like? I mean, you said that you feel like it's okay, but it'd be nice to see.
I don't have anything printed out or ready to hand up. We could certainly circulate something. I do have copies of the site plan that demonstrates the spacing requirement. That should provide more visuals as to just the cross-section, or not the cross-section, the overview of the street, if you'd like me to pass that out. Yeah.
Can we enter these into evidence?
I can try to speak to that a little bit too, if that would be helpful. So with the right-of-way dedication, we would not be required to construct any additional infrastructure, so that the infrastructure, it wouldn't change either way, whether the right-of-way is dedicated or not. And we'll, as part of the project, be paying a fee in lieu for the ultimate infrastructure as part of that road section. So that part of the project's not changing. We're just at this time not dedicating the right-of-way due to Duke's requirement that the right-of-way not be dedicated within their easement. But there is a 6-foot sidewalk along there, so that pedestrian walkability is not changing, and that would be standard with the, if the ultimate road section were built out anyway, there's a 6-foot sidewalk that's required as part of that. So that would remain the same. And again, the road section here is actually wider than the city's section, so it's 41 feet back of curb to back of curb versus the 38 feet that's required. So there's extra room in that road section for bikers as well. So I think that's why we feel comfortable that the pedestrian and biking is addressed with the current section as it is.
Great, that's helpful, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the commission will now close the hearing and bring the matter to the table. As a reminder, this commission is tasked with deciding if, based on evidence presented, the proposal meets the applicable standards. Decision cannot be based on personal preference of commission members, rather is based on the standards and evidence. If based on its deliberation, the commission requires additional evidence, the commission will reopen the hearing. Would anybody like to start the discussion?
I guess I'll start. Overall, I see it's fairly reasonable. I mean, there's only 2 parking spaces. It's right by Eliza Pool Park, I think. So I don't think there's going to be really an impact from the traffic from this. No one's going to really be going that fast. And seems pretty straightforward to me.
I think this is a project that's serving a much-needed community in Raleigh and in the country. So I also see nothing really objectionable to what's being presented and requested as far as alternates to the UDO here. Any other comments, concerns? Would anybody like to make a motion on this matter?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We'll both second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, the commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted. When the written decision is approved, the applicant and other parties with right to such notice will be notified following adoption of the decision. All right. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to draft a proposed order in the matter if that's acceptable to council, unless they would prefer to introduce, to send up their own. But happy to do that, and I'll share it with council, and then it'll be part of the minutes for your consideration next month.
greatly appreciated. Thank you, Raz. All right. With that, we'll move to the second case on our agenda and bring City Attorney Pat back. We'll now open the evidentiary hearing for DA 2, 2026. On today's agenda, Sarah will introduce the hearing. Before you start, please allow me to swear you in. Do you swear to affirm the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
My name is Sarah Rogan, Senior Planner with City of Raleigh. I'll be going over DA 2 2026, located at 6204 and 6250 Glenwood Avenue. It's located on the east side of the street, south of the intersection of Glenwood Avenue and Pleasant Valley Road. The property is zoned commercial mixed use for 3 stories with a parking limited frontage. The applicant is proposing to demolish a portion of an existing shopping center and construct 2 general buildings for grocery store and retail, shown there in the site plan. The applicant has applied for 4 total design alternates, 2 of them being for relief from the primary street-facing entrance requirement for both buildings, and then 2 for the relief from the ground story transparency requirements on the south building facades of each buildings. Pedestrian access requires at least 1 entrance per non-residential ground floor unit on each public street-facing facade. Oh, this is transparency. I'm so sorry. So transparency, I think it's this. Sorry, thank you. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Pedestrian access is intended to concentrate pedestrian activity along the street edge and provide an easy, identifiable, and conveniently located entrance. In the parking limited frontage, there is a requirement of 1 primary street-facing entrance per building and direct pedestrian access from the public sidewalk to the primary street entrance of the building. Here are the 3 findings that must be satisfied to grant the design, or the 4 findings that must be satisfied to grant the design alternate related to pedestrian access. Transparency is the minimum percentage of glass that must cover a ground story facade measured between 0 and 12 feet above the surface of the finished ground floor. A minimum of 50% required transparency must be located between 3 feet and 8 feet. Transparency is intended to lend visual entrance to street-facing building facades for both pedestrians and building occupants and minimize blank wall areas. General buildings in the CX district are required to have 33% transparency coverage on the ground story. Here are the 2 findings that must be satisfied to grant the design alternate related to transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards. All right.
Good afternoon. Do you want to sign all 4 of us, or swear all 4 of us in at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, before you begin, for the record, can you please state your name, address in relation to the case, and then I'll get the 3 of them sworn in.
Worth Mills, address is 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 302. I'm the lawyer representing the applicant.
And one at a time, I'll have you introduce yourself, state your relation to the case and your address, and then I'll have you all sworn in.
Michael Ogden with Kimco Realty. We're the owners of the shopping center at 4 Summers Court, Cockeysville, Maryland.
Jonathan McCarron, representing CI Design. We're the architects for the project. Our address 530 Hillsborough Street in Raleigh.
Rick Vino, representing John R. McAdams Company, 621 Hillsborough Street, Suite 500, Raleigh.
And do you all swear or affirm the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Before I get started, I did want to pass around copies of the fixture plan for one of the buildings. Should I just sort of take all of them, pass them down?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. All of our team that is present here is available to answer questions at the conclusion of our presentation if you have any. Kimco is the owner of 6204 and 6250 Glenwood Avenue, which are the two main parcels that make up the Pleasant Valley Shopping Center. That shopping center includes a Dick's Sporting Goods, a Petco, a Marshall's. I'm sure most or all of you have been over there at some point. Kimco intends to demolish one of the buildings within the shopping center and replace that with a new Sprouts grocery store and a new multi-tenant out parcel building. Bringing a new grocer into the center will create more daily trips. A lot of the trips or a lot of the businesses in that shopping center today don't generate daily trips per se. So we think that by having a grocer, we can increase the daily trips not only for Sprouts, but also for the proposed multi-tenant building and the existing businesses within the shopping center. Because of the orientation of these new buildings, which would face the shopping center's interior, we are asking for relief to the pedestrian access and the ground floor transparency requirements. 6204 and 6250 Glenwood Avenue are outlined in yellow. All but one of the buildings are designed to face internally to the shopping center parking lot. When you look at other parcels and businesses along this stretch of Glenwood Avenue, they are very car dependent. It feels more like Highway 70 than it does Glenwood Avenue. The two properties to the north, those two that are highlighted with the red dots, those are also owned by Kimco. They have an approved site plan for the construction of a 350-unit apartment building on those two parcels. Adding those residents, these new residents, to the perimeter of the shopping center should also help with the daily trips and the business for the existing tenants within the shopping center. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to get the menu to come back up. There we go. Casey, do you know how to get this little box off the screen? Okay, there we go. Thank you. Apologies for the delay there. The properties are both split zoned with CX3 and CX5 zoning. Both zoning districts also include the parking limited frontage. Other properties along Glenwood Avenue also have that same parking limited frontage. The UDO requires that ground floor street-facing facades for a general building have at least 33% transparency. As I mentioned, because of the building orientation and the functionality of both of those buildings, we are requesting 0% ground floor transparency for both. And the parking limited frontage requires each building to have a street-facing entrance for pedestrians. And again, because of the orientation and the functionality, we are asking for relief to that requirement for both buildings. The scope of the proposed work is shaded in red. This is the building that Kimco plans to replace with the Sprouts and the multi-tenant outparcel building. The anchor tenant space for this building faces north towards the shopping center's main parking lot as well. There are other smaller spaces for other tenants that sort of go from the southern facade around to the eastern facade. Bed Bath & Beyond was the last anchor tenant in that space, but they have since left. And so now the building is occupied by, or partially occupied by, a variety of smaller tenants. This is a street view of the existing two-story building and the existing right-in, right-out driveway from Glenwood Avenue. Here's another view farther north up Glenwood Avenue. The anchor tenant space, as I mentioned, is on the opposite side of the building. And this slide shows the existing conditions plan sheet, just highlighting the layout of this area of the shopping center today. And now moving to the proposed development, here are the two buildings that Kimco is proposing to replace that building with. The Sprouts grocery store is building A on the left side. The front facade of Sprouts faces the internal parking lot to the east. The multi-tenant parcel is building B, closer to Glenwood Avenue. The front facade of that building faces north towards that same parking lot. We are keeping the right-in, right-out access from Glenwood. There is new trash collection that is planned on the left side of this drive aisle between the southern facade of Sprouts and Glenwood Avenue. I'm going to have Mr. Rick Vino come up and walk you through the landscape plan.
Good afternoon. Rick Vino with McAdams again, and apologize for my voice. I've been losing over the last couple weeks, so I'll try to keep it short. We have proposed landscaping around the dumpster enclosure to add additional relief from these walls, if you want to say, vertical, and even just the vegetation relief that we try to do with frontages. Along the planned south side of the Sprouts building, we also have proposed a series of landscaping, not just a row of shrubs, but intense design, if you want to say, for that area, consisting of a front row of shrubs that would range in the approximate 4-foot height ball, and with shrubs in the back ranging up to 6 to 10 feet in height to provide additional visual relief of this wall. At the frontage of the property, we're also doing street frontage plantings out there, a row of shrubs completely along. I can pan this up. Oh, back. There we go. It's hard to see. It's right at the very bottom of the screen there, but there is a continuous row of shrubs along the back of Building B, going parallel with that sidewalk as well, essentially from driveway to driveway. So that is, I can answer any further questions about landscaping, but I'd rather, I guess, go to that first.
The plan here appears different than the plan in the package that was submitted. Is this the most current plan we're seeing on the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I did want to walk through the different building elevations as well. This is the Sprouts building. This is the south elevation that would face Glenwood Avenue. This facade utilizes signage, color changes, and building material changes to minimize that street-facing blank wall area. This is the east elevation, again, facing the parking lot. The primary entrance projects from the rest of the eastern facade with a covered walkway on the south side of that main entrance. This is the north elevation facing the sort of main shopping center parking lot area. The one thing I would note here, because this is not street facing, and you can see on the screen, we are not utilizing the same level of architectural detail for this facade as we are for the Glenwood Avenue facade. There is sort of no vertical banding. There is no signage here to sort of lend visual interest to pedestrians. And then this is the west elevation. This is the rear of the building Again, you can see the material changes and a smaller sign there. Now transitioning to the out parcel building. This again is the south elevation, the Glenwood Avenue facing elevation. It's planned for 3 separate tenants, and each tenant space utilizes different building materials and colors to break up the blank wall area and again lend visual interest from Glenwood Avenue. The Cava space is planned for red concrete masonry. The Fort Kicks space is painted concrete masonry, and the Shackburger is fiber cement siding. So trying to create some variety amongst each of those tenant spaces. And while this is the rear of the out parcel building, and the rear of this building is going to house sort of kitchen and employee areas, Kimco has proposed fiber cement paneling on the Cava and Fort Kick spaces to mimic that glazing that would otherwise be required per the transparency requirements. This is the east elevation, sort of facing the main entrance into the shopping center. There is fiber cement paneling incorporated on this facade as well. This is the west elevation, part of that Cava space, also including the fiber cement paneling. And then the north elevation facing the parking lot, front of the building, so to speak, and entrances are clearly marked with both awnings and signage for each tenant. So now going through the pedestrian access standards of approval. The first standard, the approved alternate, is consistent with the intent of the street-facing entrance regulations. The intent of these regulations is to concentrate pedestrian activity along the street edge and provide an easily identifiable and conveniently located entrance for residents, visitors, and patrons accessing a building as pedestrians from the street. So again, if you want to look at the fixture plans that I passed around now, I think that would be time for us to sort of review that and explain why we can't include really pedestrian access or transparency along that southern facade. The interior of that southern facade, so once you're in the building, that part of the grocery store is lined with frozen food aisles, a dairy cooler, and stocking areas. And just functionally speaking, from both the preservation of the food products as well as internal circulation for patrons, it does not make sense to locate a pedestrian entrance along any of those points of the proposed grocery store. And similarly, for the multi-tenant out parcel, that southern facade is all back of house operations. So that's where we have kitchen equipment, employee areas, areas where pedestrians and customers are not going to be, even when they're in the building. So again, having a pedestrian access in those areas is both unsafe and just doesn't make sense from a operations perspective. That being said, this development does include convenient pedestrian access from Glenwood Avenue to each of the building's entrances. As you see on the screen, there is sidewalk along Glenwood Avenue. This development would propose sidewalk that connects from Glenwood Avenue into the site, connect to the sort of walkway in front of the multi-tenant out parcel building, Building B. It would also include a painted crosswalk across that drive aisle leading you to the Sprouts building. The second standard is that the pedestrian access point is easily identifiable by pedestrians and customers and visitors. Unless a customer lives in the future apartments to the north, almost every customer that visits either Sprouts or the multi-tenant out parcel building is going to arrive by car. That's just the nature of this stretch of Glenwood Avenue. It is extremely car dependent. From the parking lot where those patrons are going to sort of start their arrival to the store, both of those buildings' entrances are clearly visible. Again, the Sprouts building, we have the projected entryway with the signage above the entrance. And for the multi-tenant outparcel building, there are signage awnings directing pedestrians and customers to those locations. The third standard is that recessed or projecting building entries or building elements have been incorporated into the design of the building to enhance visibility of the street-facing entrance. Again, just because of the functionality, we are not proposing any street-facing entrances here, but the architectural detail that is included in both of the pedestrian entrances from the parking lot is projected and does use architectural elements to discern where those access points are. And the final standard of approval for pedestrian access is that the route from the street and bus stops and other modes of public transportation to the entrance is safe, convenient, and direct. The slide on the screen here shows the existing building and the lack of any pedestrian connectivity from the sidewalk up to the shopping center. It's not a very safe feature or pathway for folks to walk now. There is no dedicated space for them. They're sort of navigating cars just as other vehicles would be. Again, however, the proposed plans do have a dedicated sidewalk to each of the buildings with that painted crosswalk for that portion of the drive aisle, or that goes across the drive aisle. Now switching gears to the transparency requirements and going through those two standards of approval. The first standard is that the design alternate is consistent with the intent of the transparency requirements. The transparency requirements themselves are intended to lend visual interest to street-facing building facades for both pedestrians and building occupants and minimize blank wall areas. For both of these buildings, and for the various uses to operate as they're intended, we cannot have any glazing, whether it be from a food preservation perspective, employee safety perspective. It just is not feasible given the layout and how the overall shopping center functions. However, each of these buildings utilizes a combination of architectural treatments to break up the blank wall area and to create that visual interest from Glenwood Avenue. Again, looking at the Sprouts building, we have the change in building materials, we have the change in building color, we have signage, all of which are directing people from Glenwood Avenue to our shopping center, and they know immediately this is a grocer. Similarly, for the multi-tenant outparcel building, we have changes in building materials, changes in building colors, and signage so that those pedestrians along Glenwood Avenue, if they are traveling by foot, which we think is probably not very likely, but if they are clearly aware of the types of stores and which stores are facing Glenwood Avenue. Second, to also speak to the second standard, the street-facing building facade utilizes other architectural, artistic, and landscape treatments to create visual interest to offset the reduction in transparency. One thing that I forgot to mention was the fiber paneling that is included on the outparcel building as well, just to mimic what windows or glazing would look like if they could be provided. But as Mr. Vino laid out, we are also trying to lend visual interest through the landscaping plans, both along Glenwood Avenue with new street trees, new shrub plantings between Glenwood Avenue and the outparcel building, and then in that grassy area between the Sprout southern facade and the drive aisle, including a variety of different shrubs at different planting heights and different mature heights to offset the reduction in transparency on that facade. So trying to do it both through the architectural treatments as well as the landscaping treatments. That concludes our presentation. I appreciate you all listening through all that. We are all available if you have any questions, but thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public present who wish to speak? All right. Seeing none, commissioners, do you have any further questions for the applicant?
Did I understand correctly that on the Cava building, the Glenwood facing, what looked like windows was actually fiber cement siding?
Yes, I'm going to have Jonathan, our architect, just come up and speak a little bit more detail about those, about that paneling.
Yeah, good evening. Jonathan McCarron with CI Design. So yeah, the paneling that you see there, the lighter color that looks like glazing is fiber cement paneling intended to more or less mimic glazing, given that we can't provide glazing in that location. So it's fiber cement applied to the CMU and trimmed out with mullion to simulate the kind of mullion of a storefront.
In either building, was a spandrel glazing considered as part of the approach, although it would not be transparent, but as an alternate to that approach?
As an alternate was not considered because of cost and functionality. It wasn't providing any additional function, so the fiber cement was our intent to satisfy the intent of the code.
Can I say something? At a detailed level, you said you would apply that fiber cement to the block work. Is there a consideration to create a shadow line, much like you see if it were truly masonry construction and a window was inserted, or maybe a window was there, it was taken out, and then it was infilled, so at least it takes a step closer towards recognizing that this should really be window glazing as opposed to kind of painted on.
Right. So creating an opening then would require the steel to carry the masonry above. So this was not introducing any kind of hole in the masonry, but still having trim around the perimeter that will provide a minimal shadow line, maybe not as deep as a opening with recessed storefront would, but still have a kind of a minimal shadow line.
I've got a similar question for this elevation that we're looking at for the market. As rendered here, everything appears to be on the same plane. I'm going to assume that's the case. Is there any ability to change the plane with the materials from the brick to the, what I'm assuming is CMU, the larger tan block, to get a little bit more visual variation there? Because I know this didn't get triggered, the blank wall aspect of the UDO, but I'm kind of curious how it skirted that.
So there is a little bit of articulation at the shack burger with the fiber cement there.
But on the sprouts specifically, where we've got the two different block types, is there any articulation or plane change between the materials to?
No, they're on the same plane.
Is there any ability to do that? And I might be overreaching here, being that that's not really the question beforehand, but with this being a transparency question, I'm wondering what additional may be done to add a little bit more visual interest to that facade.
Sorry, the other thing that's not depicted in this elevation is the landscape component, which has multiple layers to that. That gives some, it's not maybe the architectural depth that you're talking about, but three-dimensionally in that whole landscape from street curb to building face has depth and layering to it.
Do you have an exhibit so that some of us could understand what that might look like?
I don't have one handy other than the landscape plan. You could perhaps pull that up and speak to that.
Yeah, I'll pull that landscape plan back up just to reference that in terms of the sort of the depth of the shrub plantings. And Rick, could you outline just the various plantings along the southern facade, the species, and then the heights that we're aiming for?
Yeah.
Rick Vino again with McAdams. Going the immediate row closest to the building from left to right, we'd be looking at some viburnums, which let me point out all these are evergreen shrubs as well. So we'll be looking at the viburnums, and they are going to be larger at the 6-foot ball wide and 10-foot tall. We're going to maintain them so they typically stay like that maintained. Unmaintained can get much larger, but that's not the goal here, to have them look wild. Each side of the sidewalk will have a ilex, hollies, and those will be taller. They're actually going to be installed. We have them getting installed at 60-inch high instead of just standard 18-inch heights to try to have immediate variation in these heights and relief. And then there's also a little circular area that kind of protrudes out. So those hollies are included there as well, with viburnums the rest of the way filling in from end to end. The hollies tend to flank each side at the sidewalks and the end of the wall corner. In front of those, we'll step down with smaller hollies, tend to be the 4-foot, a lot more like parking lot type shrubs that you'll see, 3 to 4 foot heights, 3 to 4 foot balls. And they're going to be abelias, hollies, and I think that was it up there. Yeah. I'm sorry, a holly and a lower petalum as well. So a mix, trying to get a good mix of species, so not just one solid color. Lower petalums will get reddish, changing up colors of green, and even introducing others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to go back to the elevation and your note about the flatness of that facade. So we could, where the pilasters are, or the implied pilasters, pull them out or have some relief to those, kind of step the coursing out.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice, again, I think that might be overstepping, but just from overstepping our purview as the commission. But as I'm looking at that and kind of seeing that, imagining the experience driving along Glenwood there with the orientation, I think a little move like that could really just elevate that a little bit more, given the kind of blankness of that wall, and give it a little depth and character for those stuck at the light near that building.
What conversations have you had, if any, with the city about the future vision for Glenwood Avenue, or Highway 70, as you referred to it, with respect to like future pedestrian use there, or are we committing Glenwood Avenue to its current feel?
Well, I think we're certainly improving upon what is out there today. Sorry, I'm just sliding through. I mean, today we have no sort of pedestrian connectivity into this site. That will obviously change as a part of this development and this redevelopment of this part of the shopping center. I think outside of the scope of this work, Kimco is showing through the site plan of the multifamily development to the north that they are trying to bring a wider variety of uses within the shopping center itself, or just immediately sort of outside what has been the conventional shopping center, which should help create more walkability for those folks as they want to get groceries. They'll have a place that is, you know, a 2-minute walk from their apartment to do so. I think bringing a shop or a grocery store here will do more to maybe transition Glenwood Avenue than reorienting or orienting a shopping or a grocery store towards Glenwood Avenue. This is still, I think any grocery store that's going to be located in this shopping center or along this stretch of Glenwood is going to have a significant amount of parking for its patrons. I don't expect this to be sort of your Publix at Peace or anything. It's just not that urbanized yet. So when we are evaluating sort of building placement and orientation, any grocery store that is not in the heart of Raleigh that has a urban or a hybrid frontage you're going to run up against transparency issues because you're locating the side of the building facing the street, or you're going to run into build-to issues because we would have to provide more parking than what is required within the parking limitations, which is sort of 2 bays of parking between the right-of-way and the building. So there is that sort of push and pull given the intended use as a grocery store and that parking limited designation. We recognize that, and I think the plans themselves are making a transition from sort of what has been an always purely commercial, sort of purely retail, to having a grocer where you're going to have more everyday shoppers, plus bringing in the apartment building to the north, which should increase some walkability for those folks and bring more walkable customers to the shopping center. But I mean, I work out there. There's no way I would ever walk over to that part of Pleasant Valley. It's just too car dependent.
Today.
Yes, today.
Yeah. And so my question is, have you talked with city staff or anyone about the future vision for Glenwood in relation to its pedestrian-friendly future potential?
We have not had any conversations sort of about the impact of bringing this grocery store and how that would positively or negatively impact the sort of the future plans for Glenwood.
Okay, thank you for answering that question.
I'm going to ask a question going back to the transparency piece. I know you all mentioned the landscaping, which you said the maximum height was going to be 10 feet, but the shrubs, right?
This is Rick Vino with McAdams again. That's correct. That'd be about a maintained height, 6 to 10 feet,
6 to 10.
roughly.
Okay. So my question is, what other considerations have you all given to kind of compensating the transparency factor other than the landscaping on that facade?
So to mitigate the lack of transparency, we have sort of broken up this facade sort of into these smaller rectangles as opposed to just one continuous color or building material through the vertical banding and then also the horizontal banding at the top, plus the sprout signage that's facing Glenwood Avenue. So those are the architectural treatments that we've tried to pair with the landscaping to create a little bit more visual interest from the right-of-way.
I guess my question is, have you considered any others that didn't work? Are those the ones that we have tried and it worked and that's what you're presenting?
I don't think we had, but we are open to any suggestions that the commission might have.
I guess just to follow up on that, is this design pretty standard for a Sprouts Market since given that it's a chain?
I'll have Michael Ogden with Kimco come up and speak to more of the business aspect of that. And if you could just repeat that question. Sure.
Hi, I was just asking if this type of facade.
Let me go back to your prior question about what other things considered. Actually, there was a conversation with city staff, I recall, and there actually wasn't really a concern about the side of the building. And we just said, no, we're going to do it because I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
That is the one conversation that did occur several months ago.
Okay, that's good.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, the question was if this type of facade layout is pretty standard for a Sprouts Market, given that it's a chain. It's not.
What standard is a blank wall?
Okay.
Quite frankly.
I haven't seen many of these on the side, so I'm just curious what it
This
is.
is definitely not what they would typically do. Typically, it would just be one solid color. It would probably just be, block or split face block.
Okay.
With nothing else.
That's good. Thank you.
Yep, sure.
You guys had mentioned that you're open to, I think, maybe inviting some input from us. Is that okay, given that that's been put out there, to opine?
It is. Your authority is to make a judgment as to whether the facade treatments are enough. Are they sufficient? So there is real discretion here. Certainly, you can make suggestions short of actual direction, but the applicant can do the same. The applicant can go back to the drawing board and come back and present other ideas as well. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So cut me off if I say the wrong thing. So I think that the conversation that Kyle had, and yeah, maybe we can articulate those pilasters, that just, I think, starts to address an alternative to transparency, right? You're creating shadow relief interest, you're layering it up with landscaping. Coming back to the Kava building, 4 kicks, the question I had brought up of, are these cement panels flush, or is there a shadow line in there? I understand, certainly the economics of steel headers and that type of expression. Is there a consideration you guys could have that would project those pieces to articulate off of the block, to give it shadow line, and to help layer that facade, which again, I think is the intention of the UDO and why we're all here talking about it.
Absolutely. Side of the Sprouts building, I think it's easy enough to project to pilasters. Yeah, I think that's easy enough, and we should do that. The rear of Building B, and I jump up because I had some early conversations with the architecture team, and I don't think Jonathan was part of them in his defense. I had some thoughts on what that should be, and I'll call it the applied solution that's there with the trim going around it. I actually think it was applied to the brick, so it is projecting. So if I'd stand along the side, it would be sticking out instead of sticking in, and instead of an out in. So there would be a shadow line there, and there's trim, which will create a shadow line on the piece itself, but it's sticking out in front of, it's proud of the brick wall.
Right.
But it wasn't.
I guess
it wasn't meant to be flush.
Yeah. But there, you could say to the eye that, if it's cement board and it's a 1/4 inch thick, and the trim around it is 3/4 of an inch thick, does that really? Yeah, there's a shadow line there, but does it have impact from somebody, who's along the sidewalk or in their car on Glenwood? If a projection in the kind of, 2x4-ish dimension or whatever it might be would certainly have more impact visually. And I'm just wondering if there's any consideration that your team would have to.
Having memorized, we've actually drawn construction plans for this, so there are dimensions, and I just don't recall what they are. I don't know if you do, Jonathan, but.
Yeah, but I think that we could make that a little deeper, like you're saying, and that would be a relatively simple adjustment that would, increase the shadow line that you're talking about.
Yeah, the elevation almost looks like there's some frame around it, and maybe my architectural reading of that is it having some depth, kind of to his point, 2x4 something, so you get 3.5 inch projection. Now you're limited on exactly how far out that can project, 4 inches or so. But I do think a more deliberate frame around that expression could probably help add a bit more articulation to that facade without getting overly fussy.
Right.
The shape of your lot, if we could go back to like maybe a site plan, is interesting to me, and I'm curious to know, in terms of how you're facing the building, it looks like there could have been an opportunity to face it in a way where it fronted the parking lot and Glenwood, like catty corner, and I'm curious if that was explored as a way of not having to go before
Sort of
this
at
process.
Like an angle, a
Yeah.
45-degree angle.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would impact
In the back, you've got
circulation.
truck movements, you've got all kinds of stuff. I hear what you're saying, but yeah. Well, it explored, sure, somewhere in the back of somebody's head as we drew things, but
because the loading areas are back in this area. I have no idea how that would impact the ability to circulate those larger vehicles through the back and then out onto Glenwood. That has not been explored.
Thank you.
you know, the truck's leaving, we're kind of doing this. And there is a landscaped island, so we're trying to be respectful to folks, and the rest of the shop is going to too, so they're not completely staring at a attractive truck dock operation.
Commissioner, any other questions for the applicant? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Staff, anything further on this? Nope. All right. Hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the commission will now close the hearing and bring the matter to the table. As a reminder, the commission is tasked with deciding if, based on the evidence presented, the proposal meets the applicable standards. This decision cannot be based on the personal preference of commission members. Rather, it's based on the standards and evidence. If, based on its deliberations, the commission requires additional evidence, the commission will reopen the hearing.
Approving something like this without having additional information. Yeah, I can speak into my microphone, sorry. My concern is really around the future use or future look for Glenwood. And I don't feel like I have enough information to make a decision that this is the correct path forward, given the UDO requirements.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Am I allowed to disagree?
That's what we're here to do.
I think, personally, I feel like this is, and this might be the engineer in me, but I feel like this is pretty cut and dry. I think that there's plenty provided on the transparency side of things, or not transparency, but in the landscape side of things to prevent anything. Anyone who's driven on Glenwood knows that you're not really, or how car dependent that is, and especially at this shopping center, how it's kind of laid out. I think that they're taking it the most efficient possible way. So I don't think that, I get where you're saying in the future aspect of it, but I think in confined to this case, in this case alone, I'm not really sure how that applies.
I think the intent of the UDO is to support the current vision for how we're mapping out the city and what pedestrians are experiencing. And so requirements would require upgrades to projects as they go re-enter development. And I think that that's what we're here to debate. So I hear you. And I just feel like the pedestrian experience that is defined by the UDO, in this case, staring at a fully brick wall, fully opaque walls on both sides is not, I don't think I have enough information to be able to sign off.
The solid wall also lends to the faster movement. There's less visual interest. There is a pedestrian connection coming from the Glenwood sidewalk that exists, which suggests that someone could, as a pedestrian, and might need to, enter that space from the southeast corner. And so along that southeast corner, providing transparency to create more of a pedestrian experience even as you are approaching the front door would make sense.
I don't disagree with that, but as the exhibits were presented, it seems like they're maybe targeting quick service kind of restaurants or what's that, fast casual restaurants for these types of spaces. They're going to have a back of house component to that. It seems kind of natural that those would end up there along the south side of that building. While it might not be the most attractive elevation to look at as presented, I think maybe some of the items we proposed as far as adding additional articulation and shadow lines with some of those applied elements begin to address that in concert with the landscape. And then that building B facing the parking lot seems like, I guess, the most natural response to that, so that these two buildings, along with the rest of the shopping center, kind of create this more inwardly focused development. I hear Kate's arguments about, the future of Glenwood and this being, maybe the UDO having a more pedestrian-focused intent. But I think there's a much larger lift needed to kind of address Glenwood and Highway 70 here with its 8 lanes of traffic. I don't know if that's really.
Yeah, so I don't want my opinion to be
relief there.
misconstrued here. So in terms of visual impact of landscaping, of articulation, all of that actually sounds good to me. The thing that is missing for me is, from like the evidentiary hearing, the thing that is missing for me is evidence, that consideration that Glenwood just is what it is. And that the intention around Glenwood at the moment, there are neighborhoods on the other side. I can't imagine them ever even considering walking across Glenwood. I drive up and down this all the time. I go to that shopping center. Thank you for having things that I like to go to there. And Sprouts would be added to that list. I just would love to have a little bit more understanding of how Glenwood is being thought of by the city. So if someone from the city wants to speak to that now, please feel free. We could reopen the hearing. In terms of evidence, that part or consideration that's missing for me from this, how you've suggested to treat it works in the grand scheme of the design review.
Yeah, I would like to maybe add something to that, because visually, or for a corridor like Glenwood Avenue, if there is a future plan or a future vision that would have been already part of city's vision that's adopted, so that's when somebody who's coming in with the redevelopment will have to kind of adhere to that. Yeah. If it's not defined already, and if it's vague and they don't have anything to, like a plan or anything to adopt to, it's just speculation at that point. So,
well, it is defined.
Does Glenwood Avenue have a vision?
Oh, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if transportation can speak to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question, I think, for the city more than the applicant.
As a reason
because
for
of that.
providing an alternate. Mm-hmm. Because as I see it, the city is asking for it to be pedestrian and friendly street front.
Yeah.
Right.
But
If that's a
I can get over
formal
it.
adopted plan or vision, then it's fair to ask to adhere to that, I think, yeah.
But at the moment, it's not. And the relief they're asking for
Yeah.
is kind of two-part. Primary street-facing entrances are required. While they're not public entrances, they do have the back of house there. They're providing, appears to be a new sidewalk kind of to the west of Building B, extending north to the Sprouts. And then the second pedestrian relief or related relief they're requesting is direct pedestrian access required from the public sidewalk to the primary street-facing entrance of the building. And I think they kind of walked through that case with the Sprouts and it facing the shopping thing. So I think we might be kind of conflating a couple request here, and like looking at the building lot line, they're reaching out past that to make a connection to the existing sidewalk, but I don't know that they're required to do much more than that in the UDO at the moment.
Can we reopen the public hearing?
Sure.
I'm trying to pull up the City of Raleigh street plan on IMAPs. Having difficulty finding that. I think transportation is here. If they could speak to any Glenwood Avenue plans or vision for this stretch of Glenwood. I did want to highlight the amenity areas that surround Building B on both the east and west side of that building, which the intent there is to, again, lend some additional visual entrance if you're coming in through that main entry point to the overall shopping center. I should have brought that up in our presentation. I apologize for that. If I can find the street plan, I can pull up that information, or if you would like to call somebody from the city up here, I'm happy to sort of search that while they speak if necessary.
Is there anybody from the city that could speak to future street plan in this area of Glenwood?
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Kevin Kidd, Transportation Review Manager. I manage the review group for transportation. If somebody could help.
Swear you in real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
If someone could help frame what I'm supposed to be answering, that would be helpful, right? I think I got worse gist, but I'm happy to answer when I know what I'm asking about.
Largely didn't.
Hey,
Yeah.
Kevin, I think my question is, as someone from transportation staff, are there any, what is my question? Do you know what my question is? I want to carefully ask this, yeah. Was there any what do you know what my question is?
Yeah. Was there any consideration given to the future state of Glenwood being more pedestrian friendly?
So what we would look at when we're looking at a plan like this, people think transportation, they think mainly right away, and that's true, but there also are ADA requirements, okay? So our street design manual, it's in 9.4, talks about ADA access to the public right of way. It says specifically to the main entrance. So what you guys are talking about here today, I haven't been around it fully. It looks like to me, maybe it's a separate set of standards outside of my purview. The main entrance, as I understand it, and listening to Work's testimony, is more facing the parking lot, I guess. And then there's a sidewalk connection out to Glenwood. As I see here, I see a striped path across the driveway, and I see that frontage. That's what I would have expected the transportation reviewer to look at, and looks like they've done a good job here.
Okay.
But for the secondary question, I'm sorry, I don't know that I can be a ton of benefits to Work's question about projects on Glenwood. Glenwood's never ending. I don't know what the latest plan is, but long-term, we've got 6 lanes. It's already there. I don't know of any updated streetscape projects. But yeah,
That's helpful.
absolutely. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anything further from the applicant before we bring the matter back to the table?
No, the 6-lane divided street section is the widest, sort of most traffic-centric street that the city has in their plan, so.
Casey or Sarah, could you bring back up the findings or whatever that is phrased?
Do you want transparency or pedestrian access
Let's
first?
start with pedestrian access first. Okay. Does anybody want to speak to this any further?
Motion to approve?
Any seconds?
Second.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And then for the second matter, transparency. Thank you, Sarah. Any further discussion around these items as it related to Building A and Building B? Good.
Offer a motion to approve with the conditions that were discussed relative to the relief on those facades in question.
All right.
And having a mechanism by which the city can follow up on that.
If I may, and staff is available on this as well, it would be difficult for staff to enforce a condition that didn't have more specificity than that. It would give the staff more discretion than perhaps they're comfortable with.
So I would amend that then to say approved on the condition that for the Sprouts building, that pilasters were planned for the street fronting on Glenwood that would be 3/4 of an inch in depth.
Yeah, some projection.
And for the building B, that we would, that the applicant would provide 4 inches of relief on the cement panel
We say
quasi windows.
up to.
Up to 4
Because there is the ADA projection kind of limitations with that.
If the
But I don't want them
sidewalk was
running
right
afoul. Yeah.
If I may, the best practice then would be to ask the applicant to voluntarily provide those features.
We can provide those conditions as stated. That's not a problem.
Do we need to re-motion, or is it live? Okay.
Can we confirm the exact language of the conditions, please?
Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were engaged, so I didn't have an opportunity to write them down, and if need be, I'd refer to the video, the recording. But we could, Casey, try to pin the text down now.
Yeah, I was trying to type while you were talking, and I think I heard that there's a condition to require a minimum of 3/4 of an inch of relief on the vertical pilasters on the Sprouts building?
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
And then a condition to require a maximum of 4 inches of relief on the cement panel window.
Projection of the frame of the cementitious panel.
So a maximum of 4
Correct.
inches of projection. I think we can work from that from the review perspective, so thank you.
Any seconds for that motion?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, one opposed. All right, the commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted. The written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with a right to such notice following the adoption of this decision. Thank you all very much. And got one more case on the agenda. Does anybody need a quick break, or do you guys want to proceed? All right. With that, our third case, DA 3/2026, will be presented by Jeff. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have been sworn in, so we can continue. Again, my name is Jeff Keynes, Senior Planner with Site Development Group, City of Raleigh. Here to present DA 03/2026, midline at North Hills, address identified as 901 Navajo Drive. And as you can see on the screen here, there is currently development on the site. It is north of Interstate 440, south of Oculate Drive, and bordered by Quail Hollow Drive, and can't see the other one on the eastern side, but you can see Navajo Drive going right through the center of the development. It is currently zoned CX20 LUCU, which is a lot of initials, but everyone does have a specific meaning for this. The overall development for the applicant is proposing is for development of a 12-lot conventional subdivision. Currently, each lot has been identified as an open lot, so no specific properties have been identified for a specific development. It's just each lot will be a large lot for future development at a later time. The applicant has requested a number of design alternatives, which they will get into shortly. This is a list of requests for for Quail Hollow, which runs north and south into the site. I'll give you a second to look over them. A second one will be going through the middle of the site on Navajo Drive. Again, the specific one is identified here on the slide. And the last one, which is being requested, is along Oakline Drive, running north and south. Oakline is on the eastern side of the overall site for this development. Identified are the specific findings for the street cross sections, which were identified in the list of requests for design alternatives. And I figure that everyone can read them either before or during the hearing. So hopefully you allow me not to sit there and read the PowerPoint. And again, number 5 and 6, and 6 has multiple parts to it. And that concludes my presentation. Is there any questions you have of staff at this time?
Not at this time.
All right. And as I forgot to mention before, we do have transportation staff that can answer your questions as we go through this. So if you'd like to hear from them, feel free to call them up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, the applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. As a reminder, any evidence and argument must focus on the applicable standards. All right, and before you begin, for the record, can you please state your name, address, in relation to the case?
Yes, good afternoon. It's Michael Birch with Longleaf Law Partners here on behalf of the applicant, 4509 Creedmoor Road, Suite 302, Raleigh 27612. And then if I also ask if Ryan Fisher could go ahead and get sworn in at the beginning here.
Yeah, if you will, state your name, address, in relation to the case.
Hey, Ryan Fisher with Kimley Horn Associates. We're 300 Moore Street, Durham, North Carolina. And I'm the professional engineer, civil engineer on this case.
All right, and do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Again, thank you to Jeff for the presentation to kind of summarize our design alternates. Again, they kind of break them down into 2 categories, one for Quail Hollow, and then the second batch are related to Navajo and Oakline, related to the tree lawn instead of the tree grate. So I'll focus on Quail Hollow first, try and wrap that, and then go to Navajo and Oakline. So just big picture, you see the property outlined in red. I'm going to try and see if I can get some of these features to work for me here. This is essentially the redevelopment of this property here will essentially function as an extension of the North Hills East, North Hills Innovation District. The plan is to ultimately extend Church at North Hill Street, which then becomes Navajo Drive, across Big Branch. The Midtown Bridge will come in at some point here, that will connect, and then Navajo will continue on here. So this is being developed by Kane Realty, developer of North Hills East, North Hills Innovation District. And so many of the requests are about kind of having that continuity from what's already kind of existing on the west side of Big Branch and then continuing it on the east side of Big Branch.
I don't mean to derail you, but I do have a question for the city attorney. I did not realize the nature of this case. My firm is currently working on a very early study for a potential building in this. Is that a potential conflict of interest that I need to recuse myself from?
I'm afraid it is. Your vice chair will step in.
Do not have a vice chair this evening. Who would be next up?
The group settles upon a chair for this.
All right, Travia, are you
I
now
can help,
permanent?
yeah.
Apologies. Absolutely. We're here. We've kind of gone through all this. They're going to present their case.
Okay.
Ask the public. If not,
Okay.
If I may, I recommend that you, by motion, name the chair and vote.
Who makes that motion?
Anybody.
I'll make a motion for Shravia to be our, what?
Chair.
Chair. Chair for this matter.
All in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, you may continue.
Right. Welcome.
Thank
you. Lucky you. Right. We can come back to this if needed. This is the city street plan that will drive some of these requests, or is kind of what's driving the need for some of these requests. This is the pending subdivision plan in review now. As Jeff mentioned, setting up a number of different development parcels. Yes, they're all kind of designated as open lots now, but individual ASRs will come in for each of these lots. And actually, 2 ASRs have already been submitted. One was submitted today, one was submitted about a week or so ago, and I'll highlight where those are just to give you a sense of that. But just for context, again, this is kind of where the Oak or Quail Hollow Bridge, Midtown Bridge, will come into Quail Hollow there. And again, these are really just here for us if we need to dive in a little bit deeper onto those individual plan sheets. This is one of the ASRs that were just submitted. So again, Quail Hollow turning into the bridge there, Oak Line. Again, we have a request related to Oak Line as well. So this is about, I believe, a 7-8 story apartment building, some ground level active uses there. And this is just a zoom in if we need to touch on it related to some of the sidewalk widths. And then this is the ASR that was submitted today. Similar, 7-8 story apartment building, ground level retail. Again, no connection to that future Quail Hollow Drive. That's where the bridge starting to elevate there. But again, just it has frontage along Navajo Drive. So again, just wanted to provide you that context as we have these discussions. So the Quail Hollow Drive requests, and there's 2 that aren't on here that are part of our request, but I'll speak to why those aren't on this page. So we are asking to keep the right-of-way at 64 feet in width. That is the width of the right-of-way dedicated by the Exchange project to our north. So when they did their subdivision, they dedicated Quail Hollow at 64 feet. We're asking to keep that consistent through our site. The other requests are related to the street plan cross-section calls for now above the curb bike lane and sidewalks.
when the Exchange project was coming through, the street cross-section called for bike lanes in the street, only a sidewalk above the curb. To have a consistent, travel lane, bike travel lane, pedestrian travel lane, we are asking, all of our requests are geared at maintaining a consistent street cross-section from Quail Hollow Drive as it comes from St. Albans through the Exchange project, through this project, and as it then hits the bridge to go over 440. So again, just context, we're really talking about, right, kind of this segment right here. It's about a 200-foot segment of Quail Hollow. We want to avoid, as you're coming down, if you're biking down Quail Hollow from St. Albans, you are below the curb, and then having to pop up above the curb for 200 feet, then pop back down as you're approaching an intersection and about to go either over the bridge or left or right. So that's what's driving these requests related to Quail Hollow. Want to note this is kind of our proposed section on the left. I just want to highlight we are, again, within that 64-foot wide right-of-way, we are providing actually wider sidewalks than the code requires. Only a 6-foot sidewalk on each side is required here. We're going to 8, and we're able to do that within the 64-foot wide right-of-way. The two that were not on that slide, one is we actually don't need a design alternate to ask to be able to do an 8-foot sidewalk instead of a 6-foot sidewalk. That's why that one wasn't shown. And then the UDO cross-section now is 27 feet back to back. That's because the bike lanes went up. Again, we're putting the bike lanes down, so we're doing a 36 back to back. Again, all in the manner to be consistent and to really provide a more safe vehicular, bike, pedestrian travel way along this section of Quail Hollow. This is just the plat from Exchange showing the 64-foot width. Before I move to talk about tree lawns and tree grates for Navajo and Oakline, I will just stop here to see if there are any questions that the board may have on the Quail Hollow request. Okay.
I just want to clarify one thing. You mentioned the Midtown Bridge. That is a pedestrian bridge, or is it a traffic vehicular?
It'll be multimodal, so it'll be all vehicular, bike, and ped.
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted for that context.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, it may be worthwhile to ask the applicant if the applicant is formally amending the application with regard to the two items the applicant had just mentioned.
Do you mind answering the question?
Sure. We'll amend it as to, because we did receive confirmation from staff that we do not need an alternate in order to provide wider sidewalks. So we can formally amend it to remove that request, but we'll keep the request in there to provide a 36 curb-to-curb section as opposed to 27, just because we haven't gotten that confirmation. But
okay.
That was included in our original application. Thank you. Okay, so for Navajo and Oakline, our requests, we'll state it simply, is to provide a tree lawn instead of a tree grate. So that planting strip, kind of curb, wanting to provide trees within a 6-foot planting strip, and then the sidewalk, as opposed to having to provide tree grates within that kind of sidewalk section. Again, this is for the entire length of Navajo as it comes out of NHID, as well as this segment of Oakline here. Let's see. We'll note, again, we are continuing to provide, this is our only request for these two cross-sections, we are still providing the 10-foot wide pedestrian, kind of sidewalk as part of this street cross-section. It really is, can we plant trees within a tree lawn as opposed to having to install tree grates within there. But I did want to be clear that going from tree lawn or tree grate to tree lawn is not reducing the kind of the clear pedestrian path that would otherwise be provided as part of this street cross-section. Again, this is the Oak Line section here, again, still providing the required sidewalk widths. Just wanted to highlight for the board, this is Church at North Hill Street, kind of in that to the west, in the North Hills East NHID section. You can kind of see on both sides, at least on the north side here, we have a tree lawn all along Church at North Hill Street. As you come down to Hardemont, and then as you go, Hardemont also has that section of tree lawn. It has parallel parking on the street there, again, with the tree lawn section. This is a pending plan within NHID. It's kind of the last parcel before you cross Big Branch into the midline project. And again, it is proposing and showing parallel parking along a tree lawn, not tree grates. So just wanted to highlight that what we are proposing is consistent with both what's been constructed within North Hills East and North Hills Innovation District, and as it's continuing to come east. This is one of the ASRs of the buildings that was just submitted for the midline area, and I wanted to include it again to highlight that you see we're not just providing the wide sidewalks within the right-of-way, but we also have kind of that sidewalk pedestrian area between the right-of-way and the building face. So again, going from tree grate to tree lawn, not adversely impacting the pedestrian experience there. Same on this site. Wanted to just give you an idea of this. If you travel on St. Albans, this is in North Hills East. This is the street cross-section there, parallel parking up and down St. Albans, where cars are parallel parking adjacent to a tree lawn. Folks are exiting their cars from the passenger side onto the tree lawns there. So just back to, I'll stop there. So the reason why we're here is because Navajo Drive is designated a Main Street parallel parking street on the street plan. That is really one of only 2 or 3, I believe, street cross-section types that doesn't provide an option of tree lawn or tree grate. Every other street cross-section type, neighborhood local, neighborhood yield, neighborhood street, that allow parallel parking, allow that parallel parking adjacent to a tree lawn. Avenue 2-lane divided, Avenue 3-lane divided, even the Avenue 6-lane with parallel parking. All of those sections, street cross-section types, allow parallel parking adjacent to a tree lawn. This is just one of those where it's not an option. I highlight that just because staff had commented about, well, is there a safety concern about folks exiting a vehicle from the parallel parking area onto a tree lawn? I would answer that with, I would hope not, because the vast majority of the city's cross sections allow for parallel parking adjacent to a tree lawn here. I showed the St. Albans section. I would also ask the chair if I could pass up, just again, more for the board's understanding, just examples both from Raleigh Ironworks and from Village District to see where recent examples of where parallel parking has been provided adjacent to tree lawn instead of tree grate. So if it's okay with the board. Pat, how, you want me to pass it directly up or? Okay.
While you're doing that, has there been any consideration taken as to tree lawn versus tree grate in regard to stormwater drainage? Could that be affecting it in any way? Have you spoken to anyone about that?
Yeah, so I can have Ryan Fisher come up, again, professional engineer for the project, address that. And while he's up here, we'll also ask him he'll speak to, one or two of the other standards related to that.
Just to confirm, was that the end of your presentation?
No, not yet, but
Okay.
I'll be very quick though, yeah.
I just want to make sure there was more,
Ryan Fisher with Kimley Horn. So the question is, as far as stormwater.
Yeah, the difference, why there would be tree grates, in that area and not tree lawns.
Yeah, there really would be no difference from a stormwater perspective.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's
I was
already,
earlier.
he was sworn in. Yeah.
But yeah, so the stormwater would be collected in the actual road, within the curb line. So the tree lawns versus tree grates.
Oh, okay, so it's not affected at all.
Right,
Oh, okay,
yeah,
got it.
What's the purpose of a tree grate?
I'm not sure. But
I will say, just in reviewing the street cross-sections and the streetscape types, the only streetscape type that mandates a tree grate is for those in the most urban where there is a shop front frontage, which is really just downtown. But I'll note, as I was coming in on Dawson Street, parallel parking along Dawson with tree lawns, even that section of Hillsborough Street on the south side from Dawson to the Capitol Building, tree lawns, right, parallel parking along that. So what I wanted to convey is that parallel parking adjacent to tree lawns is not an unusual situation. It is probably the predominant situation, circumstance out there today, not just as a historical relic, but also as part of new development, new, urban development, ironworks. Again, that Clark and Bellwood next to Village District. So just wanted to give the commission a sense that we are not asking to do something unusual as part of this. This particular developer has a lot of experience working with both tree lawns and tree grates, and there is a reason. There's often and has dealt with a big maintenance issue related to tree grates, and even though they're in the city right away, still having to maintain those, and those are much more difficult to maintain and to look nice and attractive than tree lawns. So that was also a driver of this request, as it's both trying to kind of create a continuous and, feel across developments as you're traveling Navajo to Church at North Hill Street. Also just a practical maintenance standpoint as well. So we addressed all the findings in our application. Happy to touch on them. From an intent standpoint, right? The intent of these street cross sections is to be able to provide a kind of context-sensitive approach. And again, as we're moving from North Hills East through the Innovation District to this project, we are trying to provide a singular context there. Again, you heard from Ryan, won't adversely impact stormwater collection. Again, does not impact safety either. We're continuing to provide wide sidewalks for that pedestrian experience. And again, exiting out onto a tree lawn is not unusual at all. So, and myself, Ryan, our team is here to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you. Is that the end of your
It is
presentation
now,
now?
yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
thank you.
Thank you.
Does any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant? You do, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, I have a question. So in the two exhibits that you provided, it seems like there's some unique scenarios there that don't exactly match what you have going on in North Hills. So I'm wondering, like, this looks like Ironworks. Well, it is Ironworks. There you go. You've labeled it. Is there parking there? Is that parking, or are those pull-aside lanes?
No, those are parking, and I just now realized that the street view picture I took, didn't have, but no, those are parking lanes along Ironworks Drive, like adjacent to Jaguar, Bolero, and yeah.
Are you sure? And then the other thing that I noticed about the Clark and Bellwood is that there's a sidewalk in between where the parallel parking is and the trees. And so my question is, when it comes to tree health, do you feel, or do we have any evidence or consideration to the long-term health of trees in that urban environment where someone might be opening their car door or stepping out onto tree roots, as I'm sure we've all experienced, like parallel parking in Oakwood is like next to impossible sometimes to get your car door open because there's like tree roots that are coming in. So I'm wondering if the purpose of grates is to help mitigate that in an urban environment like the one you're building in. And so I understand wanting continuity of look. I guess I'm pushing a little bit on the why.
Yeah. And I'll ask Ryan if he wants to come and talk to just generally the health, speak to whether there's a difference in tree health, tree lawn relative to tree grate, if you want to speak to that at all. Okay. All right. That's fine. So I will say, again, I know from experience on maintenance, in order to maintain trees within tree grates, again, coming from this particular developer's experience in other contexts, the tree health has been impacted. And so when they've had to go in and replace in areas with tree grates, again, certainly familiar with parking in those types of neighborhoods, Oakwood, others around the city where, there are older trees that have kind of grown out of the ground. And I would say on that point, it is probably also, would have also had a great impact if there was a tree grate and sidewalk there, right, to kind of that infrastructure. So I think that there are both something like that where a tree is kind of outgrowing its area will happen both in a tree lawn and in a tree grate scenario.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Bring it to the table. Okay.
You may close the hearing.
I'll close the public hearing and bring the matter to the table for discussion. Go ahead.
I was going to ask if we could have the findings brought back up. I know there was a lot of things that we had to look at.
Thank you.
Kind of have to toggle between those two, but.
It's okay. Thank you. Is that a good place to start? Okay.
I think the street cross-section evidence feels substantial and appropriate, and we should approve that.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
do you want us to motion them separately or together?
You may, I mean, there may be other discussion.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Is everybody in agreement sort of with that, or any discussion around that at all? No? Okay.
That's add one thing.
Yeah,
Just the logic. I mean, I know there was a lot of discussion about the tree grate versus tree lawn, and I think that and maybe we have to put a condition if there are pieces of this development in the future that become a mixed-use condition versus a residential at the ground level, because it seems like the intent is to provide, safe walking space in a Main Street condition. And so if that ever becomes a condition on this site, which we don't know yet, I don't think, then perhaps in those areas, that's a reason to do it.
Yeah. I mean, they did say that the ground floor, the first floor is going to be mixed use.
Oh.
So it's not all, yeah. So there is a retail component to it now, as they are proposed in the ASRs at least, yeah. And hold on for a second. I mean, we can ask our city staff to maybe provide a little bit more clarification on why one is preferred over the other, if that is a lingering question. They may have a reason to adopt that type of street type or cross-section or measures, if you will.
Sure.
So we can ask that, but is there any other question we want to discuss at the table before I open it up to the city staff? Okay. Are you going to come up? Sorry, I didn't catch the names because I was not sitting in this chair earlier.
No, we have Brandy Crawford, transportation engineer. She can hopefully address the question of tree grades versus
Yes, please.
Tree lawn.
tree lawn. Sorry.
Hi, Brandy Crawford, City of Raleigh, Senior Transportation Reviewer.
Thank you. So there is obviously a discussion about the tree lawn versus tree grade in S. Thank you. I'm going to have to swear you in. Randy Crawford, could you please state your name, address, and I don't know what else. Give me a... Yes, please.
Brandy Crawford, 222 West Target Street, Raleigh. And what was the last thing?
Relationship to the case.
I am the Transportation Reviewer.
Thank you. I have to say something. Hold on one second. Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. If you can go ahead and give some explanation on that, yeah.
So the Main Street parallel parking street type does require tree grates as the only listed planning type option. I do not have a history on how that was decided for that street type, so I don't know specifically why that was written that way. I can say that in the areas where the tree grates are not between the trees, there is additional sidewalk provided in that area. So you would have a 10-foot wide sidewalk, and then in the areas outside of the tree grate, there would be a 6-foot space that was also sidewalk that goes to the back of the curb.
Okay. I think that's helpful. Thank you. Yeah. Before I brought the matter to the table, I didn't ask if there was any public who wanted to speak about this case. So just to make sure, any individual from the public who wants to come to the podium to speak about this? Hearing none, we'll keep it at the table.
Okay, you may wish to say, I'm closing the public hearing.
Okay. I'll close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the table. Thank you. No one told me to get ready for this. So.
Can you pull back up the findings for the trees, please? Thank you.
You wanted the one for the trees? Any other discussion points or there?
I think I'm okay.
Kate's thinking, so I just wanted to get.
As it pertains to this case, I feel that the findings support approval. And I have some broader questions about compliance.
Does that impact? Okay. All right, well, is anyone ready to make a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
Any second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All that in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Awesome. Motion approved as the findings are. Thank you. Let me make sure. The commission's written decision will be adopted when the minutes of this meeting are adopted, and the written decision will be provided to the applicant and other parties with the right to such notice following adoption of the decision. Does that close the quasi-judicial process? That's the last case on the list?
It is, yeah, it's
I can-
covered.
I can close the quasi-judicial process at this point?
Yes.
Yes, so.
I was going to say we should call Kyle back in for the last couple items on the agenda.
Okay, great, thank you. Oh, my God. Thanks. It was fun and nerve-wracking at the same time.
Thank you, Shravya. All right, I think the last item on the agenda was chair report, vice chair report, and attorney report. Pat, do you have anything for us?
No report, thank you.
Okay. And Casey, if you want to come up, I know she sent out an email to us this week with code of conduct or something similar that City Council approved. If y'all could take a few moments, review that. I think we'll discuss that at our meeting in 2 weeks on the 21st. If we have any questions, we can invite Pat to come and answer those for us. Do you have anything additional for us, Casey?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you a quick update on Sir Walter Raleigh Awards. So I know I sent, I think, a reminder earlier this week, so if you could please continue to promote the call for nominations so we can get a nice, robust pool of nominations for the jury to consider. We did have a few more nominations received in the last couple days. So just so you're aware, we've had 10 total nominations so far. We do tend to get a lot of them closer to the deadline, but please do continue promoting that. The deadline has been updated online, so it has been extended to May 18th, which is a Monday. So for folks that y'all know and you can spread the word, we would really appreciate that. And then I did want to check in on the guest jurors that were being invited to serve on the jury. We spoke about it a bit at the last meeting, and there was a couple folks that I think Kyle and Dave were going to reach out to. That's what I had made note of, but I wasn't sure if y'all had heard back from those folks and whether or not they were available, and if not, we do need to nail that down sooner than later so that we can make sure they get the information they need in time for the jury deliberation.
To add on to that, I've not had much luck with 2 people I've reached out to, so if you all have any, Jay Smith and another friend at Perkins and Will, but if there are any guest jurors you guys might want to recommend, if you do want to reach out and check their availability, please do.
Yes.
June 3rd,
It's
believe.
June 3rd in the afternoon, and the jury will be meeting at One Exchange Plaza on the first floor, and then it's tentatively planned to start at 12:30 and go till 4. Sometimes they get done earlier, it just depends on how quickly, excuse me, the jury moves through the deliberation. And we provide lunch, so.
Incentive. Thank you, Casey.
Yeah.
All right, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
It's like,